My name is Mark Holthe. I'm an immigration lawyer with Holthe Tillman, located in beautiful Alberta, Canada. We assist clients all over the world in navigating the complex immigration processes for immigrating to Canada. This tutorial is designed to help individuals who wish to sponsor their spouse who is currently living with them in Canada. It is a series of tutorials where we go through the forms and show you what to include within each section. We know how difficult it is to get information these days from Immigration Canada, and so we have decided to create these tutorials to help our clients and our future clients in navigating this process, all for free. Now you might ask, why are we doing this for free? Well, it's pretty simple. Our goal in doing this is to encourage as many people as possible to check out our site, to increase profile, to help people to realize that our expertise and unique background working within immigration as immigration officers prior to working within Holthe Tillman, the immigration section of Holthe Tillman, can provide value to you as you're going through this process. Some people just want to do it themselves, but there's others that may need a little bit of extra assistance. So you can go to our website and check us out a little bit, who we are, the services that we offer. But this is designed to give you a free resource that you can access to get good information on how to complete the Citizenship and Immigration Canada application forms for sponsoring a spouse from within Canada. As we're going through this tutorial, if you find out that you need a little bit of extra assistance, feel free to call our toll-free number at 1-844-485-8204. Go to our website at www.ht-llp.com and book a consult. We're happy to help you at any stage. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the Citizenship and Immigration Canada website. Now this website here, and I've kind of skipped ahead a little bit, is found at cic.gc.ca. And when you get there, you can first go to, and I'll back up here a little bit, got ahead of myself. When you're on the main page of Immigration and Citizenship, you'll go to find an application form. And then from there, you're in Canada, so you want to sponsor your spouse from within Canada, and then we'll scroll down until we find the spouse or common law partner in Canada class. We're going to start our first tutorials with the IMM1344 and the IMM5481. So the application to sponsor is the application that the Canadian individual who is sponsoring their spouse from abroad, this is your form, this is what you're completing. Always pay attention to the fact that these forms themselves don't always work properly with every version that you have of your Adobe application. So we had to open this up in a separate field to get it to work for our purposes. But this is the form. This is a validated form, and you'll notice that there's these red boxes around everything. This is designed to try and make it easier for you to complete the forms yourself. You have to select the box that you want. You have to answer the questions appropriately before you can advance. And when you complete it and you validate it, if it validates correctly, then you know you've completed the form and you have all of the fields properly completed. Now this application itself is, like I said, is for sponsoring a spouse from within Canada. There is no right of appeal if you're denied. And so for this purpose, it really doesn't make a difference what you're checking off here, whether in the first box, if you're found ineligible, do you want to proceed or do you want to withdraw? Essentially, if you click withdraw, then you'll get the applicants or the person that you're sponsoring, their application fee will be returned to you. If you want to proceed with the application, then for whatever reason, if you're found ineligible, then you wouldn't get your money back. Now, from within Canada, there is no right of appeal. Outside of Canada, you would probably always want to click this proceed with the application. But for within Canada, it doesn't really matter. There's no right of appeal, so you can probably click withdraw your sponsorship if you like. Language of preference, we won't go through a lot of the questions here in detail just because they're simple and self-explanatory. You're always going to click whether it's English or French. On your application here, there's never a cosigner. So when you're sponsoring a spouse, cosigners can only be a spouse or a common law partner, so it doesn't apply here. Make sure you complete your name and your date of birth and everything as it is listed in your passport. You want to make sure that that's consistent. That is the information that they will use when they're ultimately creating the permanent resident visas when the application is approved. Your relationship to the principal applicant. Well, are you a spouse, or are you a common law partner, or are you a conjugal partner? These other fields are for other family class applications. So this sponsorship form, this 1344, is used for other applications. So you're going to select there which one you are. Conjugal partner is essentially a common law partner that you don't live with. And we won't get into a lot of details regarding that, but if you're outside of the country and you're sponsoring, or your spouse is outside of the country, but you're not married, but you are in a common law type relationship, you can't be together for whatever reason outside your control, then you could be considered a conjugal and apply under that category. But this today is all talking about in Canada applications. So for the purposes of our process today, we'll just indicate that your spouse. When you select a particular choice here, you'll see that the next boxes are grayed out. So you won't be able to fill those in, and it just tells you that you don't need to put anything in that particular field. Now the sponsor personal details, this is yours. So this is your family name, your given name. Have you used any other names? Have you, such as maiden names? You'll put that in the box here. You'll fill in your gender, your date of birth, the place of birth, country, and then your status in Canada. This is where you'll indicate how you became a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. So as a permanent resident of Canada, you're also eligible to sponsor a spouse from abroad. So select the one that applies to you. Will indicate that this individual here is a Canadian citizen by birth. So they were born in Canada, or they acquired that right by virtue of being a child of a Canadian citizen. Your current marital status. Now, this is interesting because up here, if you indicate that you are a common law partner, it's possible that you could still be married to someone else and still be eligible to sponsor a spouse from abroad. No, so you can't obviously be married to two people at the same time. That would be considered bigamy under Canadian law. But you can be married and separated from a previous spouse. That divorce has not yet gone through, but in a common law relationship in Canada where you can actually proceed forward with sponsoring that spouse. So current marital status, this is where you'll indicate here if you're legally separated, if you're still married, common law, whatever it is. So we'll just go back here and we'll just indicate that you are married, and we'll flip this one back here to spouse. Okay, so as we're going through these forms, same information. You'll want to indicate the date that your relationship started, so the date that you're married, the name of your current spouse or common law partner and their name. Then have you previously been married? So you just fill in these questions just as they're listed, and a lot of this is pretty intuitive. There's not much that you have to worry about in terms of how you answer these questions, but make sure that everything is internally consistent. Mailing address, if you're doing it yourself, this is all yours. Often when we act as counsel or representatives for our clients, we'll put our information in there so that we can ensure nothing gets lost from the government, or time-sensitive documents are addressed immediately. Sometimes if they come to you and you don't appreciate the urgency, then it's possible that things could slip through the cracks. Ultimately, CIC uses email addresses as the primary method of communication these days. So make sure that this section here, email address, is completed with an email address that you use frequently and will check frequently. And also that you check the junk folder frequently to make sure that an important CIC correspondence is not sitting in your junk folder, and because if it's not responded to quickly enough, then the possibility is you could see your application refused for failing to respond. This question, residency declaration, asks if you, the sponsor, are living in Canada. Well, for our purposes today, you're going to indicate yes, just because this is the in Canada process we're helping you with today. You're going to indicate that you live in a Canadian province or territory, or the province of Quebec, and then you'll go through these questions. And so each of these questions is important from the standpoint of a sponsor, because if you answer incorrectly, it could cause you to become ineligible to sponsor. And you can see here, any no's to the first 4 questions would make you ineligible. So you can't be under the age of 18. Are you a Canadian citizen or permanent resident? Well, you have to be in order to sponsor. The person that you're sponsoring has to be within a member of the family class, or, as the case for our application today, the spouse or common law partner in Canada class. Do you reside in Canada and no other country? Yes is the answer. However, if you answer no, it's not necessarily the case that you'll be ineligible. You just have to make sure that when you're completing the application, you provide lots of evidence to show that you have every intention of going back to Canada, whether that's you have a job lined up already, you've secured a lease of a premises, but that your centralized mode of existence, where you're going to really spend your time, is going to be in Canada. In the past, we've seen some individuals who had their applications refused because they were spending even as much as or as little as 60% outside of Canada and 40% inside, and they found that was justifiable reasons to refuse. The reason they refuse and look for opportunities to refuse when you're not currently living in Canada is because of the rights that are conferred upon your spouse. There is a rule within the immigration law that states that if you're sponsoring a spouse and they are accepted as a permanent resident, as long as they're accompanying a Canadian citizen spouse abroad, they'll always remain a permanent resident. They won't lose their permanent residency for not living in Canada. The permanent resident rules require that a person live in Canada for at least 2 years in every 5-year period, but that rule is there's an exception to that if you're accompanying a Canadian citizen abroad. So be advised, you need to make sure you get back to Canada and show lots of evidence that that's the case if you're not currently in Canada. But once again, this is an in-Canada application, and so that would probably apply more particularly, obviously, to the family class application for sponsoring a spouse, which is a different process. Then there's other questions. In the 5 years preceding your application, did you become a permanent resident after being sponsored as a spouse? Well, there's rules preventing you from sponsoring right away if you yourself were sponsored and then had a separation from a prior spouse. So make sure that you answer each of these questions correctly because they're super important. Have you submitted any previous applications? You can't have more than one undertaking in place at a time, so you can't sponsor more than one person through different family class processes. Social assistance, you can't be on welfare or any other social assistance, otherwise you'd be ineligible. Bankruptcy, if you're undischarged as a bankrupt, then you will also be ineligible. Do you have any previously sponsored family members who are receiving social assistance during the validity period of an undertaking? Well, this question relates specifically to if you've sponsored someone else and that person went on welfare or social assistance or accessed other social services where you, as a sponsor and pursuant to your previous undertaking, had an obligation to cover those things. So that would make you ineligible. And then did you co-sign on an undertaking? That's a pretty straightforward question. These ones here now relate to admissibility and other issues. So it asks, have you been ordered to leave Canada? Are you late in making payments for any immigration loans? Are you in jail? Have you been convicted of any sexual offenses or serious violent offenses? And this in particular relates to domestic assault and things of that nature. Even if you're in default of child support payments can make you ineligible. So as we go through each of these factors, look at them carefully and respond accordingly. Even with respect to, have your citizenship been revoked? Have you been subject of report on inadmissibility? And these things really relate as much to permanent residents as anyone else, because Canadian citizens, this doesn't apply to them. And then, have you been charged with any serious criminality within Canada? If you have any questions regarding these more legal definitions, feel free to contact our office. We are more than happy to help you work through any questions you may have regarding whether or not the conviction you have is truly an offence under an Act of Parliament in Canada. So as we go through this and we scroll through, you can see the undertaking that you as a sponsor have to agree to. And when you're sponsoring a spouse or a common law partner or a conjugal partner, it's 3 years from the day that they become a permanent resident. So it doesn't matter what happens if you're separated, if you have a marriage breakdown, if your sponsor that you're bringing, if the sponsored person that you're bringing into Canada doesn't stay with you at all and it was just a sham, you are still on the hook. So it's really important that you make sure you watch things very carefully. This covers off most of the high points. The rest of the information here is just advising you on your obligations as a sponsor. But this is the first form. You can see here signatures are required by both the sponsor and the person being sponsored or the principal applicant. So once you've got that, you should be good to go.